John doesn't subscribe.
Hello everyone, welcome back to our park building series in Jurassic World Evolution 2, Jurassic World, Arizona, 2045. And this is episode 6, somewhat delayed, and for now, this is the last episode of the series. I'll get into that in just a minute. But basically, what we start building today is the plateau in the park, which has a lagoon and a monorail that goes through it and across the plateau. And so I just started doing the monorail glitch here, which I'm not going to explain how to do that because I'm sure the majority of you already know how to do it, and there's plenty of tutorials on YouTube if you want to know how. So, yeah, basically this is going to turn out to be the last episode of the series for now. It'll hopefully come back to this park later, but due to the amount of objects that's been placed, the game crashed several times during this build, and I'm currently unable to place any new objects in the save file without it crashing. The frame rate is still fine, I just don't have enough RAM right now to really build anything more than this, which is unfortunate. Though I do plan to upgrade it in the future, and at that point we can return back to this series. So, as you can see here, I'm just using the water to flatten the terrain. And I didn't end up building all the stuff we wanted to during this episode, which I was going to build the whole plateau and the lagoon, but I only got a little bit done before, the crashes started. Which is unfortunate, but basically, I was able to place more lagoon sections than I expected to be able to, and the plateau is actually quite large, and I ended up dividing it into 3 different sections of terrain elevation. One at the top that's flush with the lagoon, one where it's lowered so you can stand next to the concrete wall, and one that's even lower down where the monorail can run across the guest plaza whenever that will be built. So, yeah, I'm just doing a lot of terrain work, bringing in some various lines of rock so it doesn't just look like I placed a hill, and to make it just look natural. And, yeah, here doing that terrain work I was talking about. And as far as videos, I was planning for this to be our main video series for the rest of the year, but if that's not going to be the case, there's a good chance this will be the last full park build on the channel, unfortunately, because by the time this build will be done, it'll only be a couple months until Evolution 3 releases, probably. Maybe we'll still get another build done, but I do want to do a build in Prehistoric Kingdom once Update 13 releases this month, which will be a really nice update and very helpful for the series that we're doing, which I think I've talked about it before, but I'll talk more about that in a video that's actually relevant to it. But, anyways, yeah. As you probably guessed, just placing the rock texture on the side of the cliff is not enough, and it doesn't look good enough, and it's not continuous with the rest of the park. So, we're going to have to cover this hillside in rocks. The first thing I'm doing is that this little space here that was between the plateau and the VIP section, I decided this was perfect to make a little habitat out of, and we end up making this a Styracosaurus habitat because I do want a Ceratopsian in this park, and I don't think there'll be another place to put it necessarily. So, yeah, just lining this path and outlining this spot. I didn't want to use any fences here, which is why I wanted a smaller species, but not something that was like a carnivore and could jump, which I did kind of want to place Dilophosaurus, but it didn't make sense for this habitat, because I do want Dilophosaurus in this park. So, yeah, just covering this gap with our placeable trees. Bring in some rocks. This is a fairly simple habitat. I just thought that the rock wall would make a pretty cool backdrop with the lagoon up there, and I do think that plateau makes some pretty cool views from all the way across the park, and that's something I'm really glad has turned out with this park. I can't speak. It's turned out pretty well. It's just the viewpoints are really great and grand and giant, and placing all the rocks really helped with that. So, yeah, since we're not using fences, this is mostly going to be contained by the cliff wall, except in this one spot. Just lining this with planters, of course, and I think that we have several habitats in this big open section with the gardens and all the seating, and it actually looks pretty nice from the ground, which I didn't like it when I first built it, but now that it's been expanded a little bit, I actually do like this section of the park. So I was just placing some ginkgo trees around. I ended up deleting some of these because it looked a little bit too lush, considering that's going to be right next to this just solid rock wall. It looks a little bit too artificial that way, but I did end up at least mixing in some foliage. And this also is a pretty nice view from the VIP section, which is why I ended up giving the Styracosaurus green skins, because that's the color lights that I used for that section. So yeah, just placing some smaller rocks, because that's really the last thing I do, because that's how you fill the space between everything else. The hitbox or the trees pretty much have to go before that. And then I just started doing this thing that I've done multiple times in this park with like these sort of arms of rock reaching out, so it doesn't look so manufactured. Doing a bit of terrain work, and then I started placing our veins of larger rocks, which will be space between them will be filled with these smaller rocks. And in this episode, I don't cover the entire plateau with rock, and I did cut out a lot of the rock placing, and it's very sped up. Like in episode 3 with that Spinosaurus habitat, which turned out super good. But I did end up just covering the area behind this habitat, and this habitat is all we build in this episode, as you'll see in just a minute. So, yeah, it's kind of sad that the series is done, because I put almost 40 hours of work into this save file already, plus probably 30 hours editing it. So it's kind of sad to lose this save file. That's why I'm really hoping it's not permanent, because I'm going to try to get more RAM for my computer so we can build the second half of this park, which will be really nice, because I've had a lot of fun building the series, and I was really excited to keep working on it. And I think it's a really unique park, and I will say I think it's a very good park, at least so far. So there, I just used some rocks around the fences to help blend that together. I kind of have covered the way I place rocks a lot before, so I'm not going to repeat that necessarily, which means that I won't have that much interesting to say for the rest of this build. And I'd accept to talk about other videos that are coming out, but I don't want to spoil all those yet. So anyways, what I did here was I started working on a gate for the monorail when it goes into the wall. Obviously this would be obscured by lots more foliage and stuff once we get to building that plaza, but that didn't happen in this episode. So yeah, here I started doing the sections of the bigger rocks on this cliffside, which at first I thought didn't look very good, and I still don't think it looks perfect, but it ends up actually okay once I mix in with the other rocks. So I kind of don't use rock 2 and 4 a lot, because, you know, rock 1 and 2 are very similar, and rock 4 and 5 are very similar, so sometimes it's not really necessary to use both. Again, at this point, there's not really that much for me to actively say about placing all these rocks. It's just kind of the hard part of the park build. It's not really boring to me as I build it, but not much to commentate about it. I tried to sink them into the side of the lagoon because it has a forgiving hitbox, and I think that will look pretty nice, even though the guests will never see it. I still like those little details. So yeah, here I go back with Small Desert Rock 1 for a very long time. Very long time. About 2 or 3 hours, which this build was about 4 hours, which is kind of crazy considering it was really tiny build. It was just so much rock placement, which I will say it looks really good, and that's my just the key to in a desert park making it look really real and good is just to place a lot of rocks. In other biomes, not so much, because we have different trees and such, and it doesn't really make sense always to have all these rocks, but it just works so well and makes everything look so three-dimensional on a desert build. And at this point, the speed build is at like 20 times speed, so yeah, and I've cut out about half of this, and you can imagine this took a very long time. If you can't tell, I'm pretty sad about this park build having to be discontinued, because I really wanted to keep working on it. And yeah, I hope we'll get to return to it in the series. We probably will. But it's also going to be really fun to go back to Prehistoric Kingdom, especially with all the stuff that I missed since the last update. This game just really did not want me to build a lagoon with kelp, because I actually have not yet built a lagoon with kelp, because I haven't built a lagoon since that update came out. Yeah, I haven't had a chance to build an update since then. You know, sometimes you look at a screen like this and you wonder, what am I doing? Place 10,242 of Small Desert Rock 1 and half of a park build. Which is quite an achievement if you ask me. But yeah, that was just kind of fun to me. That hit 10,000 of a single placeable object for the park. which, yeah, you know, it's really sad to see all that work possibly be gone. So... Oh well. Yeah, our next Prehistoric Kingdom build will be super fun, though. And I'll finally get to build a solo Prehistoric Kingdom park. This lagoon was going to be so cool, though, with, I had lots of really neat ideas for it. As I said, the kelp, which, yeah, it's kind of crazy to me. I haven't built a lagoon since March. So, yeah, here's where the crashes started, which I didn't expect because the frame rate was fine. We did one crash, but that was from the move tool, so that was kind of to be expected, but pretty soon, the crashes are going to start. I was debating putting Pachyrhinosaurus in this habitat, but I thought it was a little too big, and Styracosaurus is just a better design. So yeah, we put 5 Styracosaurus in this little habitat. I was going to try putting some foliage on the hill, but I decided to leave it uninterrupted, and it looks pretty cool from ground view. This space I'm just turning into a little garden. Sorry if my voiceover is not very good, my throat kind of hurts. But anyways, just filling this with the standard desert plants we've been using. I didn't want to bring any of those alpine trees or anything, because this is going to be something that the guest actually observes, so just timber and desert. Using a couple spotlights that I actually did forget to recolor. And then I started working on the queue for the monorail to go up to the plateau, which I thought would be kind of cool that it was like a ride almost to get to the top. But then I started placing the amenities, and this is where the first crash happened. So I turned down the graphics, and another crash pretty much instantly, and this went on like 4 or 5 times until I couldn't place any objects, and that was too bad. And at this point I was on the lowest possible graphics setting, and there's just nothing I can do, so sorry about that. Thank you if you watched all the way through this video. Stay tuned for more content in the future. We'll be playing lots of other fun games, and bye. Just don't know how to do an outro after like a year and a half.